Iran's solidarity is not about dictating solutions. It's not about imposing a Western perspective or template on Iran. Iran's solidarity has been established to support the Iranian people's struggle for democracy, human rights, and social justice. It's a bit like the anti-apartheid movement in the 1970s and 80s. Iran's solidarity is about creating an international campaign to support people struggling for their freedom. And it's based on the principle of universal human rights. The human rights that we want and expect here, they are the human rights for every human being on this planet, or they should be. It's also true that the repression in Iran did not begin in June this year. It began many decades ago, first under the Shah, and then since 1979 under the Ayatollahs. For me, the great pain is that I can remember in the 70s marching with thousands of people to the Iranian embassy to demand an end to the Shah's dictatorship. You know, those demonstrations were full of people from progressive, left-wing and trade union organizations. But today, or indeed ever since 1979, where have those same people disappeared to? The people who oppose the Shah and his tyranny have been, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, absent from an equally important and just struggle against tyranny since 1979. I think of the brave women's rights campaigners who on International Women's Day have assembled in Tehran and other cities to protest against gender apartheid, to demand simple basic rights for women, and been beaten up, arrested and taken to Evin prison. I think of the persecuted lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender Iranians in a country where there is the death penalty for same-sex relationships, where such people face flogging, torture and sometimes execution. And the monstrous policy that Iran has that they will spare people, gay people, from execution if they agree to change their gender. If they undergo gender reassignment, they'll be spared execution. You know, to force someone to undergo that dramatic surgery to change their gender as the only way of saving their neck from the hangman, that is a truly monstrous, barbaric policy. I also think of the ethnic persecution that exists in Iran today against the Arabs, the Kurds, the Baluchis, the Azeris and others. I had to laugh when President Ahmadinejad went to Cape Town for the conference earlier this year and denounced Israel's racism. Well, I have lots of criticisms of Israel's mistreatment of the Palestinian people. But really, those words were quite rich coming from President Ahmadinejad, given what his regime is doing to national minorities within his country. Just take the Iranian Arabs. They are treated worse than Israel treats the Palestinian Arabs. Here they are in the oil-rich region of Kurdistan, and yet they live in mass poverty. And the Iranian regime is undergoing a campaign of ethnic cleansing, whereby not just thousands, but tens of thousands of Iranian Arabs are being forcibly relocated in distant parts of Iran in order to reduce the Arab proportion of the population in the southwest. You think about the restrictions on the Arab language, on Arab newspapers, on any cultural expressions of Arab identity in Iran. This is racism of the highest order. According to Human Rights Watch, in March 2007, the Iranian Parliament member Hossein Ali Shahari confirmed that 700 people were awaiting execution in Sistan and Baluchistan province, which of course is only one of Iran's 30 provinces. Many of those on death row are Baluch human rights campaigners and political activists. This is clearly evidence of ethnic persecution to deny those people their right to self-rule and self-government within Iran or outside it, as whatever they decide. We can recall the regime's hanging of the student activist Mehsan Lofti, who was executed in 2007 on false charges of hooliganism and gangsterism. We think about the examples of the persecution of people from minority faiths like the Baha'is and sometimes Sunni Muslims. In the last year or so, quite a number of Sunni theologians and students have been arrested, and at least one Sunni mosque was bulldozed last year. We also recall the crackdown on so-called immorality, which resulted in 2004 in the hanging of a 16-year-old girl in the city of Nekka, Atifa Rajabi. She had been raped and sexually abused by men for many years, but she was convicted of crimes against chastity. And the regime even lied, claiming she wasn't a child, she was 22 years old. It was only when her father produced the death certificate, produced her birth certificate at an inquest, that he was able to prove that she was in fact 16 years old. She was hanged like so many others by being hoisted up on a crane in a public square, killed by the method of slow, painful strangulation, a technique sanctioned explicitly by the regime because it's deliberately designed to prolong the suffering of the victim. The hanged person, their neck is not broken suddenly and swiftly, they're left there dangling, writhing, and it often takes them several minutes to die. This is truly, truly barbaric. There are labour activists like Mansour Osandu, the leader of the bus workers' union in Tehran, who is still in prison after being sentenced to 5 years jail in 2007, merely for trying to organise to defend the rights of workers in Iran. So all these different forms of oppression, they did not begin in June. They've been going on for far, far, far too long. And we're here to say that we support the Iranian people's struggle, all the Iranian people's struggle for their freedom and their human rights. And we believe, just like the anti-apartheid movement, they will triumph. Thank you.